I'm live. Hello. It's my second reading today. It's the second part of the 9th chapter entitled Pharaoh Has Spoken. This is the story of the time before Moses was born. It is written by Joan Grant. She was a writer of her far memories, and this one is her 7th book. She passed away in 1989. She was very famous in her days, born 1907, and this is a fascinating book about the time before Moses was found. Story is told by or through Nebunefer. He was the royal heir, but he yields the crook and flail to his younger brother, Ramoses II, and retires to the living water, a remote estate. So, Seti the first is dead. I think Ramoses is 17 or something, I'm not quite sure, but he's young anyway. He is on his way to claim his right as heir. So, he is on his way, literally. And he has met somebody on his way. And, oh yeah, it is one of the servants wants to join Nebunefer. Ramoses heard the chuck of liquid being poured. Pity we shan't be able to make this wine, to take this wine with us, said the man. Try as I will to use it, there will be years of good drinking left when Hebo comes to fetch us. So they knew about the living water. Ramoses pushed the door wider, and while the old couple stared at him open-mouthed, he filled a cup with wine and raised it in toast. To the prince and princess, may they live long to the sweet singing of their hearts. He sat on the edge of the table between a hunk of cheese and a platter of broken meats. Do not be frightened, he said cheerfully. I saw my brother this morning, and they have made a safe start on their journey. You know? The woman gasped. Yes, but don't talk so loudly. Another time or someone we can't trust might overhear. Does the queen know? The man's voice trembled as he asked the question. No, said Ramoses briskly, and if she ever finds out, it will be annoying, to say the least of it. So watch out how much you drink, unless your door is barred and the shutters too. He paused and took another gulp of wine to show them that he had too strong a head to fear it would ever betray his tongue. Have you heard that Pharaoh is dead? Faltered Kaa. There was a pause in which no movement or sound. I am Pharaoh, said Ramoses. Less than an hour later he was ready to go to the palace. At first he had intended only to make himself presentable, but with the help of the two who had proved themselves so much more than Sensen servants, he had dressed himself in the ceremonial clothes that his brother had worn when representing Pharaoh in audience. The kilt of fine linen was embroidered with gold bees, and the hilt of the short dagger was inlaid with lapis lazuli. The pectoral was also richly inlaid, the outspread wings of the hawks brilliant against his smooth skin. He chose a warrior headdress striped in blue and gold, and his sandals were of gilded leather with studs of turquoise. You should have a standard bearer, said Kia, already as easy with him as she had been with Neb. Shall I? No, let Pharaoh be guided only by his lions. Tell my lion boy to bring them here. The man ran off to obey the first command of his new Pharaoh. Is there nothing I can do for you? Asked Kia. He thought a moment, then said, I wish I felt as confident as I look. I hope I look, but I'm hollow as a gourd. Do you think if I ate something it might make me sick? Hunger takes the heart out of the bravest, she said, and hurried away to return with some of the cold meat and bread. He ate with vigorous appetite and then took a little more wine, which warmed his courage. Now I'm ready for my lions and my mother, he said. Kia fell on her knees and tried to kiss his foot. He raised her up and patted her affectionately on the shoulder. "Tell Neb," he said, and swallowed convulsively. "Tell Neb that I shall not betray the honor he has conferred on to me." Outside the door leading to the palace garden, the lion's boy waited. The lion and lioness purred a low thunder of welcome to their master. He caressed them until they were content to follow him. There were no gardeners to be seen, for during the first days of mourning no one, except an embalmer, may follow his usual occupations. The shutters were closed in every window of the palace. No pennants fluttered above the entrance pylon. Even the lamentation of the crowd outside the walls seemed dulled by the noonday heat. On the flagstones of the outer courtyard, the tread of his sandals and the heavy paws of the lion sounded unnaturally loud. The great bronze doors, which led into the central hall of the palace, swung slowly open. Tua stood waiting, watching for him. She looks old, he thought. Did she really love my father, or is it guilt which makes her look so old? He is dead, she said, and her voice was flat as water, stored too long in a jar. He told me that he had died, said the boy. He told me that I am Pharaoh. She pretended not to understand what he claimed, but now there was fear in her eyes. Where have you been? How dare you leave the palace when he was dying? Pharaoh does not explain his actions to anyone. You fool, she said bitterly. Must you spoil all that I've done for you by trying to pretend you no longer heed me? When did you leave the palace? Last night. Before Neb and Sensen went on to the river. Before Neb and Sensen were drowned. Who told you that they're dead? The question flickered out like a snake's tongue. A girl who lived on the grain barge. It gave him fresh strength to be able to deceive her with the truth. I've trained you well, my son, almost too well. It is an ill omen for the enemies of Egypt that the heart of Pharaoh is so cold as that he can amuse himself by dressing up in clothes of his dead brother, while the embalmers grow impatient because his father's body must wait his pleasure. She began to laugh, laughter harsh at the sound of bones glinting. And I used to mock you for being weak. Is any woman born who has the wit to judge the quality of such a son? She seized him by the arms, shaking him in passion of fury. Fury, or what was it? Her eyes were hard as black glass. Her tongue ran to and fro over her dry, pale lips as though she had a fever. He was more afraid of her than ever before. Then revulsion was stronger than fear, and with revulsion came pity. He'd seen a woman look like that before, a woman clutching at a soldier in the doorway of a hovel near the warriors' quarters. He was no longer only her son, he was a man, and the man was Pharaoh. Not until he was done with the body of his father did he allow his heart its freedom. With a gesture he had sent the fan-bearers and the attendant priests from the quiet room. Lamps at the head and foot of the bed burned with a strong aromatic scent. He shivered, remembering where he had encountered the same pungent odour before, when Tua had made him watch a corpse prepared for its purification. Already death had touched Seti's face with faint blue bruises. A fillet of sacred linen held up the jaw, and on the eyelid were gold discs inscribed with the names of the prow and the oars of the boat of the dead. Seti wore the double crown, and in his hand rested the crook and the flail, until his son should carry them to Egypt's honour. Father, whispered the boy, Father, can you hear me? He fell on his knees and pressed his forehead against the feet that now wore their golden sandals beyond the causeway of the gods. He heard only the beat of his own heart and the buzzing of a blowfly that was drowsy with incense. Don't come back here, Father, he said in desperate urgency. Stay in your tomb if you can't find Neb's mother yet. He stood up, trying to feel very tall and independent. How could he have been so cruel as to ask his father to come here, to comfort him, to come back to this body which might send to his soul an echo of the knives and hooks of the embalmers? I'm not afraid, he said. You need not worry about me, Father. He took a breath and prayed that his voice sounded not terrible or trembling. Pharaoh has spoken, said Ramoses, and knew he spoke the truth. Wow, this is interesting. This was the second part of Pharaoh Has Spoken, where the young Ramoses has taken on the heirloom, I suppose you say. Have a lovely Wednesday. The next one is the living waters.